The battle lines are drawn, and the Umkhonto party is marching with conviction. In a bold legal move that has stunned South Africa's political elite, MK has taken President Cyril Ramaphosa to the Constitutional Court, and they're not just hopeful, they're confident. The party believes the highest court in the land will rule in the people's favor, challenging Ramaphosa's recent executive decisions as unconstitutional and illegitimate. With coalition tensions high and public trust low, this legal fight is about far more than technicalities. It's a war over who truly governs the country in a time of political chaos. As MK frames itself as the voice of the disenfranchised majority, all eyes turn to the courts to decide not only the limits of presidential power, but the direction of South Africa's fragile democracy. The Umkhonto party is not backing down. Despite criticism, despite legal uncertainty, and despite being dismissed by some as political theatrics, the MK party remains defiant, and now they say they're confident the highest court in the land, the Constitutional Court, will rule in the people's favor. Their target: President Cyril Ramaphosa's recent executive decisions, which the party claims were made without legitimate authority and in violation of South Africa's constitutional framework. But beyond the legal arguments and the political posturing, something far deeper is at stake: who truly governs South Africa in the aftermath of the most fragmented election in its democratic history. Speaking at a press briefing packed with party supporters and legal advisors, MK spokespersons doubled down on their claim that Ramaphosa's presidency is not only politically compromised, but legally questionable. They insist that several key decisions made by Ramaphosa, from ministerial appointments to strategic national directives, were taken while the electoral dust had not yet settled, while coalition deals were still fragile, and before the true mandate of the people had been confirmed. In the MK party's eyes, that makes these decisions not just wrong, but unconstitutional. At the core of MK's challenge is the argument that the current political configuration lacks clarity, legitimacy, and democratic balance. In their legal submission to the Constitutional Court, MK lawyers argue that Ramaphosa acted prematurely and without sufficient checks from Parliament or public accountability. It's a bold move, not just because they are going after the sitting president of the republic, but because they are asking the Constitutional Court to do something it rarely does: challenge the scope of presidential discretion on a national stage. But what makes this moment even more explosive is the confidence MK is displaying. They're not pleading. They're not hedging. They are flat out declaring that a ruling in their favor is not only likely, it is necessary. According to them, the court cannot ignore the voice of millions of South Africans who feel robbed of genuine representation, and the Constitution must serve the people first, not the office of the president. They argue that this case isn't about Ramaphosa as a person, but about a creeping concentration of power that must be checked before it becomes irreversible. Still, critics remain skeptical. Some argue MK is using the courts as a political theater, trying to stay relevant after falling short of the sweeping victory Jacob Zuma had promised during the election campaign. Others believe this is a tactic, not to win the case, but to cast doubt on Ramaphosa's leadership and deepen public mistrust in the government of national unity. If that's true, then the legal outcome may matter less than the political messaging: that Ramaphosa is vulnerable, that the ANC is unstable, and that the battle for state power is still very much alive. Legal experts, however, are more cautious in their analysis. The Constitutional Court, while independent and often assertive, tends to avoid rulings that appear overtly political. They walk a tight line between holding leaders accountable and preserving the stability of the state. Still, if the MK party has presented a compelling enough case, one rooted not in party grievances but in constitutional violations, then the court may feel pressured to at least clarify the extent of executive power in moments of political flux. The ripple effect of such a ruling could be massive. A judgment against the president could unravel parts of the newly formed government of national unity, throw ministerial appointments into question, and even delay the implementation of crucial economic policies. On the other hand, A judgment affirming Ramaphosa's authority could embolden him and silence his critics, but also risk appearing tone-deaf to the millions who feel excluded by current governance arrangements. MK's legal confidence is also deeply tied to political symbolism. They are framing this challenge as a continuation of the liberation struggle, a new front in the fight for a people-centered government. Their rhetoric invokes themes of betrayal, elitism, and political gatekeeping, suggesting that Ramaphosa represents a technocratic elite disconnected from the grassroots realities of the country. By casting themselves as the voice of the silenced majority, MK is hoping to turn a court case into a movement, a legal fight into a popular surge. And this strategy may be working. On the ground, MK is gaining traction, not necessarily in formal power, but in public imagination. In townships, rural areas, and former liberation strongholds, there is growing discontent with the current state of the ANC, the slow pace of transformation, and what some see as a government too eager to form elite packs instead of empowering its people. MK is tapping into that anger. And they believe the Constitutional Court, as an institution of justice, must acknowledge it. For Ramaphosa, the stakes are just as high. While he publicly maintains that his actions are constitutional and necessary for national stability, the mounting legal and political pressure is impossible to ignore. His administration, already fragile due to coalition tensions, cannot afford the perception of illegitimacy. Every public appearance, every executive decision, is now weighed against the backdrop of a looming constitutional ruling that could either validate his leadership or expose its vulnerabilities. This case, then, is not just about legality. It is about legitimacy. It is about narrative. It is about whether South Africa's democracy still bends toward the will of the people, or whether the institutions meant to protect it have become tools of those already in power. MK has made its gamble. It is now up to the Constitutional Court to respond. As we await that decision, one thing is clear: South Africa is in a new era. The days of unchallenged majorities, unassailable presidencies, and passive electorates are over. What replaces them is still unfolding, in the courts, in the streets, and in every corner of this democracy.